Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here at 4:30 on this Thursday, which of course means a small towns preview with Emerson Lehman. And the Brewers and Dodgers meet in L.A. Not too long from now, top of the hour. And for Game 3 of the NLCS, we'll have a preview of that one. But we want to begin today with fresh news about the 2026 field for governor. Ben Wikler announcing today that he will not join the Democratic primary field. The former chair of the state Democratic Party is the second high-profile Dem to decline a chance to succeed Governor Tony Evers after Attorney General Josh Kaul decided last week to instead seek a third term as AG. So the field remains for now. Washington County Executive Josh Shulman and Congressman Tom Tiffany on the GOP side, 8 declared candidates on the Democratic side. These 5 are the most prominent: Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, State Senator Kelda Roy, State Representative Francesca Hong, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, and former Wisconsin Economic Development Corp CEO Missy Hughes. Time for UpFront Thursdays, a look at the week in Wisconsin politics. And we're joined now by Matt Smith, of course, the executive producer and host of UpFront, the political director down at WISN TV in Milwaukee. So the Wikler news, Matt, is this a surprise? How serious was he actually considering perhaps a run for governor?
Yeah, at this point, not that big of a surprise. I think he was at least mildly considering it back when the governor first launched. I talked with him when he was leaving the state Democratic Party. And he was at least leaving his options open. It wasn't a full committal, so I'm not shocked by this by any stretch of the imagination. He has left the door open for a future run down the road. He's working on a book right now. So at this point, at least in the race, no, it's not super surprising. He's still attempting to stay out there and relevant and get his name out there with this new book he's working on, but no statewide office, at least at this point.
All right, he says he will help in trying to get a Democrat elected. A Democrat that is still not in the field is former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. You and I spoke last week, wondering how soon it might be, because Josh Kaul last week announced that he would not run on the Democratic side for governor. So what's happening in the Barnes camp? Because we have not heard anything since last week.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's likely at this point. He indicated in his statement that he is, I can't remember the exact words, but seriously considering, as all the candidates say before their launch. Listen, I think what will become of the Barnes team if he does ultimately get in the race, I think they feel like they have potentially a little bit of time. They're looking at some of that polling that we talked about recently. That puts his name ID at least above all of the other candidates. And listen, this is a game to secure donors. I think at this point, if he is going to get in, he's going to have some confidence that he'll have the financial support he needs to get through the primary, because beyond him, at least at this point, the field is pretty much in, at least in terms of all the conventional wisdom that we've heard about the Democrats that are going to enter the race. So I think when he does come in, if he does, he's going to come in guns a-blazing a little bit, just in terms of money and fundraising and name ID. And we'll see what it does to the Democratic field. There's a lot of candidates. There's a lot of time. As we know in politics, anything can happen. So I think it's still an open race on the Democratic side for sure. How he solidifies his support and what this field, how it starts to take its shape, is going to be fascinating in the months ahead.
Let's stick on finances, but with the current governor, who announced yesterday, Matt, that the budget surplus for the state of Wisconsin is going to be more than originally projected, now at $4.6 billion. It's about $300 million more than they predicted. What does that mean for us taxpayers, because the budget has already been set?
Depends on who you ask, I guess, at this point in the juncture and what people want to do with it. There's all kinds of opinions and thoughts about how this surplus should be spent, how much should be kept as a surplus. Republicans are going to want to give tax money back. We heard about that election legislation, potentially using some of it to give grants to municipalities for security purposes. So, I mean, as we sit here today, that surplus is going to sit there. There would need to be legislative action in terms of spending. Some Democrats have said, well, depending on how long this federal government shutdown goes, would we need to supplement any federal funding for programs like Food Share or WIC, depending on what happens with that federally. All of that would need legislative approval in terms of money. So as we sit here today, it's going to sit there, but it will reinvigorate the debate, surely, on how to spend that and become part of the governor's race, most likely, just in terms of what we do with finances and spending.
Important to note, the rainy day fund has grown to $2 billion. You did bring up WIC and programs like that, and you reported earlier this week, the AP reporting again today, that in November, that funding could be done from the federal government, depending on what happens with the shutdown. The governor also urging the White House this week, Matt, to not cut the $1.5 billion in grants for energy projects in the state. Now, the New York Times reporting this week that the administration plans $7.6 billion in cuts for energy projects across 16 states, 14 of those led by Democrats. This is happening because of the government shutdown or during the government shutdown. How does that resonate with members of our state congressional delegation?
Well, listen, the Trump administration isn't being shy about where they're cutting, and especially when you look at the shutdown, what they're cutting in terms of Democratic programs. The president specifically saying, I think just yesterday, that we are going after Democratic programs and we are cutting funding to Democratic cities and Democratic projects. So they're definitely not shying away from that. Listen, I think in terms of the delegation, some are standing back a little bit just in terms of where these cuts are going to come from, how much they're going to impact as we look ahead to the next election year, especially when you look at the House and some of the key races here in Wisconsin. But that's going to be another fascinating aspect to watch, just in terms of not only this specific funding that the governor has called out, but what is going to happen with this shutdown in terms of potential firings and cuts to programs that could impact states like Wisconsin.
All right, you'll have Democratic Representative Gwen Moore on the program, Republican Representative Brian Stile on the program coming up on Sunday, and also Judge Maria Lazar, who is the conservative candidate right now for the Supreme Court seat next year. Give us a preview of that conversation and give us a hint. Does she expect the field to grow? Because right now it's just her and liberal candidate, Chris Taylor.
Yeah, no, she doesn't, and I think a lot of people will expect this to be the field and this to be the race between Chris Taylor and Maria Lazar. Listen, the stakes may not be as high. Control of the court is not going to be at stake in this election in April, but it is still going to be significant, and it's a fascinating interview and conversation with Maria Lazar. A lot of folks don't know her that well. Rebecca Bradley, Justice Bradley, saying she's not going to seek a third term, so now this is another wide open race. And she's really going after the spending that we've seen in the race, the political nature, and she's going to try to shy away from that. And we're going to see if that's going to be successful once again. So we kind of talked through a lot of that, her history with the Department of Justice, a Waukesha County judge, now an appeals court judge, and just how this race is going to shake up. It's going to come fast. April is going to be here before we know it in terms of political terms. And with so much attention focused on November, there is this high-profile race in the spring in Wisconsin once again that is going to receive some attention just because of the nature of the state Supreme Court and just the nature of what we've seen in the last couple election cycles.
All right, we'll look forward to that conversation and look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Matt, thanks so much.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
And of course, you can see UpFront this and every Sunday morning, 10 a.m. right here on WBAY TV. Well, still to come here.